All right, what's up, y'all? It is DJ Slivka with the Slivka Property Group with Keller Williams in beautiful Johnson City, Tennessee. We are here with part 2 of our cost of living in Northeast Tennessee explained. So last time we spoke, we talked about commodities, insurance, education, taxes, and healthcare. That was a lot. It was a big video. That's why we broke it into 2 parts. So in this video, what we're going to talk about is housing, entertainment, travel, kids. I have a lot of those, so I know. And a bonus, hidden costs associated with the grid. So let's get right into it. The first part we're going to talk about is the costs associated with living here relative to our area and also buying a house in this area, because if you're not from here, you've never lived in the Southeast, you may be a little out of sorts. So let's get right into it. So what costs could be associated with buying a home in Northeast Tennessee? So the first one I want to talk about, because I think it's a big one that comes up a lot, pretty much at every home inspection I have seen, or at least the vast majority, are crawl spaces. So geographically, we are in a very mountainous and sloped area. Now there are some flat parts, but there's also some places, and I would say the vast majority of homes are either on some sort of basement or crawl space. So that means if there is any sort of negative grading, the water is going to flow down. And if it is flowing down towards your foundation instead of away from it, logic would tell you, where's the water going to go? Okay, so there is a lot of things to do to mitigate that. And if they're not done properly, guess what? Someone's going to have to do it at some point, right? So let's break it down. The very first part we want to talk about is grading, okay? So we want to make sure that the land around your home is doing its job to get the water away from the foundation. We don't want it going to your footers. We want it going around your property, and various different ways you can set vegetation up. You could set up retaining walls. You could set up French drains. You could do a lot to make that happen. Someone's going to have to do it though, and that's why we need to talk about the costs associated with that. Another thing are your gutters. Your gutters need to extend at a very bare minimum 6 feet away from the foundation of your property. So you can either do that above ground or below ground. Super cost effective way is above ground. Go to a Lowe's or Home Depot type store, get the corrugated pipe, attach it to your gutters, and boom, it is gone. I can't tell you how many times we go in a basement or see a wet crawl space, there's moisture in there, and guess what? The gutter extenders aren't on there, or sometimes they're even the wrong way, and there's water coming into the corner, and guess what? It is just saturated at that corner. So we want to make sure that that is taken care of appropriately. It could be as easy as a $20 corrugated pipe fix, or it could be as big as, I've seen some bills as costly as $30,000. Now again, I'll insert, number one, I'm no foundation specialist. I am no structural engineer. I have seen a lot of home inspection reports though, and it is all commonly around the same thing. The water is going the wrong way, and it's going inside the foundation, inside the crawl space, inside the basement, and we want to mitigate that. So we talked about grading, we talked about the gutters. If the water is going in the gutter and then going down into the ground, we have to make sure that that piping is good. We have to make sure that it is not blocked, because if it's blocked, guess where the water is going to go? Back into the ground. If the pipe is broken, it's going to go into the ground. And if it's right there by the foundation, we've just done the same thing we talked about that we don't want done. So we need to make sure we have good inspections and good communication with people who could tell us how to fix that. That could be as easy, again, as digging something up, could be as low as $500, or if there's a larger systematic issue, you could have to dig around the whole foundation and put some sort of stone down. And again, these are all potential fixes if it becomes that bad, but we need a good assessment to figure that out. So let's talk about waterproofing in your crawl space. So traditionally, you have your footers, then you have your block foundation around there, and then you have the dirt, and the crawl space is in between the main level of your home and then the dirt underneath it. So over time, guess what happens? Dirt's going to get drier and it's going to get more saturated based on the moisture in the areas. What specialists agree is the best practice is to have a vapor barrier down there. So that means there's a thick mill plastic on top of the dirt, and it is affixated to the ground either through staples, something like you may put through a garden to put down like a weed cover, and that's going to keep the dirt and the moisture on the dirt compacted right there, right? So another step above that would maybe be some sort of dehumidifier. And then all that put together could cost as much as $5,000 to $7,000 if you want to completely put that out to someone else, or if you want to do it yourself. The question has to be, how long do you want to be in the crawl space? Is it easy to get to, or is it harder to? So then again, that could be just the cost of the dehumidifier and the plastic, or that could be as big as getting somebody to go in there and completely redo it, and that could cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 depending on how big the crawl space is. If you wanted to waterproof your basement, that may be something as small as very, very, very minor grading around. Could be fixing the downspouts, could be fixing the gutters, or it could be completely digging up all around the home, making sure that there is a good moisture system around there, maybe even a sump pump. The whole purpose of this point is to bring up that these are the things associated with buying a home in a very rolling hill, mountainous, slopey area, and you need to be ready for those costs. I'm not trying to scare you, but we do need to know that, because if there's a home that is a very, very low price, we have to ask ourselves why. Okay, now let's talk about the exterior. So the costs associated with the exteriors of homes around here. Now there are various different types of exteriors for your home you will find here in Northeast Tennessee. It could be something like brick, it could be a stone veneer, it could be some sort of stucco, it could be vinyl siding, or it could be aluminum siding, or also wood siding. So one point I want to bring up is wood siding, which is around here we have 4 seasons. The spring, it rains quite a bit. In the summer, we have thunderstorms, but it's also very hot and humid. In the winters, we have snow and we have rain. It gets cold. Wood expands and contracts. And so if you are not properly maintaining that wood siding, you're not painting it, you're not prepping it before it's painted, you're not having a professional take care of it, there could be high costs associated with it. Something as little as just taking off a couple pieces and redoing it, or a project as large as completely taking all that wood siding off and putting a new exterior on there. So my point here is to know that you have to make sure that if you buy a home with siding, either vinyl or wood or aluminum, if there's any sort of penetration that takes place, we need to make sure we fix it very, very quickly, because that is your only barrier between your sheathing and your home. And we want to make sure no moisture gets in there whatsoever. With wood siding, we know what is the main issue: insects and wildlife. So either that's boring bees, wood destroying insects, or some sort of woodpecker that is trying to get in there and get some bugs. It's the main reason why they are pecking there. It's not for fun, even though Woody the woodpecker made us feel like that. They're trying to get the little bugs from the various different types of insects that lay their eggs inside the wood. So again, I'm no insect specialist. I've just been around long enough to know when you see those holes in the wood, there's a reason why. So roofs, we need to make sure that we know, again, we are a 4-season area. Roofs are going to get their wear and tear. I have heard some shingle manufacturers say that the shingle warranty is up to 30 years. Now, we don't deal with the types of extreme weather like the Midwest does, with tornadoes and hail and heavy storms, or maybe in Texas, or places on the coast like Florida and South Carolina and North Carolina, etc., that deal with really, really big hurricanes. But we do get our fair share of storms. And over time, with the humidity and the heat and the 4 seasons, your roof is going to wear down. So again, the most important vital part is getting the information when you're looking at a home, or if your home is older and you're watching this video, contacting a roofer that's going to give you an idea. Now, you may say, hey, every time I call someone out, they always say to replace the whole system. Well, here's the good news. If you reach out to somebody who has trusted contacts, who know that it is more about the person than the profit, then they're going to make sure they give you all the information to make the best possible decision for you. That's the great part of being in the SPG network, is that you get a list of referral partners who will take care of that for you, who I would personally use at my home. So in our area, there are various different types of homes. There are homes that were built in the 1800s, the early 1900s, and then the 1960s is on, and then in the early 2000s. So very different types of building standards. Mechanicals of the home right now are what I want to talk about. So what does that mean? That would be the windows, the wiring, the plumbing, the HVAC system, the hot water heater, and the foundation. We want to make sure those things are intact. So if you're looking at a home built in the 1910, 2030 range, that is going to look way different than one built in the 70s or 80s. And so biggest thing to look at, number one, is it safe? Number two, does it still work? A good home inspection would answer those questions for you typically. But what I want to do is bring up the fact that there are some homes at price points around here, normally below $250,000, that one or more of those systems may need some attention. That could be something as easy as fixing one clean out in your plumbing system that needs to be fixed, or completely redoing it because it's cast iron and it's rusted from the inside out. So now your water doesn't go down whatsoever. You could snake it as long as you want. Nothing's going to happen. Or maybe you have some old linen wrap wiring that you're a little worried that may overheat, maybe putting some sort of new panel on there. Again, I'm not a licensed contractor by any nature. I just know enough to be dangerous, and I've looked at enough home inspections. And finally, the other systems of the home, you could be looking at a very minor fix. You could be looking at a large fix. The biggest part you have to understand is that some of these systems may have been completely fine for 40, 50, 60, 70 years, but now based on current building standards, that is not what you would want to live in. So you need to know to be able to ask the right questions at the beginning to know if it's safe or not, and then know how much it would cost. If you're talking about rewiring a home, that could get really, really expensive depending on, is the home 1 or 2 levels? Is there a crawl space that someone can get to easily? If there's a basement, that's a lot easier. But if there's not, then that gets really, really expensive really quick. A lot of times people think that just because the home is old, you have to completely rewire it. I've talked to electricians that completely disagree, that they could fix it in a different way. Also plumbing wise, there are different ways that you can make sure that are cost effective. So different options. Obviously, making it brand new is always best, but you need to know different options to make sure what is the best for you if you're looking to move to this area. One thing I do want to mention about windows in our area, again, we go through a lot of hot and cold. We go through the fake fall, we go through the fake spring, where it gets really warm and then gets really cold all in one day. And we know that wood and various different things expand and contract. Well, when that happens, sometimes windows may over time fail because the home has shifted or that the dirt around there has settled. And so that is something to ask the question about. If the window is not going up and down the right way, if it's getting stuck, if the door is not shutting appropriately, why? Because when they put that together, it should have been plumb, should have worked the right way, should have being the key word. But we need to ask ourselves the question, has it shifted or is it still shifting? That's the answer we need the question to. Over time in our foundation around this area, you may see some cracks. I've consulted with structural engineers before and they say cracking is normal around here. What's not normal is continuous cracking or cracking where you could fit coins in there. And again, I'm no structural engineer, but the data points are there to show you if it continues to separate, something is happening to that soil underneath that we need to address. Our HVAC systems around here, again, it gets really, really hot and humid. So we want to know, is that thing working and working well, sized appropriately, and was it engineered the right way? So let's bring up a very, very important fact. If you are buying a home that has been renovated, we want to know if that HVAC system, who did the work, was it permitted, and how did they work the engineering? I wish it was as easy as just going somewhere and getting a system, but if that thing is not put together the right way, you are going to consistently either be too hot or too cold in your home, and that is not going to be comfortable, especially when you're spending so much money on an asset and potentially relocating one, if not more than one person in your family. You want to know exactly what's going on. Our water is harder than the normal amount across the United States. So that means you're going to get some deposits in your hot water heater. If the hot water heater has been flushed, all those deposits are sitting in there, and what you want to do is at least flush it. What I've read is at least one time a year. So that could be doing it yourself, or that could be hiring a plumber. Some people may not think it's a big deal, but if you guys have ever seen any sort of video about hot water heaters being flushed when there is hard water, you will see there are a large amount of deposits in there, and that is going through your system. So that is something to take into account that you may want to do, or completely get a new hot water system, which can be as little as $900 if you install it yourself, or about $1,800 if you ask a plumber to do it. And of course, that is based on numerous different things like getting it in there, getting the old one out, and getting everything hooked up, and also the size and the gallons and whatnot. So numerous different times we talk about buying a home in this area, the costs associated with that. And of course, with the topic of cost of living, we want to make sure we bring that up. So we want to talk very quickly about the money you'll need before you even go to the closing table. At a bare minimum, it's the earnest money. It could be as little as $500 or up to 1% of the sales price of the property. So that's something to be ready for. Where that money goes is directly to the title company, and that can be used as a credit to your closing costs. So case in point, if you're buying a $300,000 home, you put 1% down as earnest money, that's $3,000. If your closing costs are $10,000, then guess what? You just got a credit for $3,000. Or you can put that towards the sales price. You can talk with your lender and do various different things. The important part to know is that you have to give that check to the title company and they will cash it. The second part are the inspections. Now, I will never recommend to a client to waive inspections. That is not what I do as a realtor. I provide you multiple different options and you pick the best one. That may be waiving it depending on what type of home you're buying. If you're an investor and you're providing a very quick cash sale, multiple times they waive all the inspections because they're getting such a good deal on it. They know that there are going to be issues and they're ready to fix those. But if you are buying something that you are going to live in as a permanent residence, wholeheartedly will tell you to get all the inspections you want to get, because information is power and you have a very small window in Tennessee with the contractual process to figure out what is going to happen. So let's dive into what those inspections are. At a bare minimum, we want to have a home inspection. Now, based on the square footage, this is just a summary, but it could cost about $450. After that is the termite inspection. So that is just the exterior and the crawl space. They're looking for any sort of issue with wood destroying insects. That could be around $90, again, depending on the size of the home. The septic inspection. Now, there are a lot of homes in this area that are on a septic system. We've talked about it a little bit before, but the sewer lines normally run at a gentle slope. But if your home is below where the septic line is, unless there is a tank in your neighborhood that's going to pump it up to the city sewer line or the county sewer line, where's it going to go? There is a county office in Tennessee that will take care of the whole process if you're putting in a new one. But if you're buying a pre-existing home, we want to do it the bare minimum, locate it, dig the lid up, pump it, and make sure everything flows into it and there's no backfill from the field lines in the yard. So that's what a septic inspection may look like, and that could cost anywhere from $500 to $900. Again, that's based on how long they have to be there, how hard it is to find it, and what they have to do once they pump it. I will tell you, based on my own experience, about 10% of those have some sort of issue. So in my opinion, if you're going to invest, I'm very intentional about that word, because would it make sense to invest $550 for an inspection that may save you $10,000 for a new system in the future? I think most people would agree yes. If you have a basement in the area, I would highly suggest, if you're going to live down there or do anything, that you have a radon system. I'm no geologist, but I have read up, and the EPA has mentioned in our area there's a high concentration of radon gas. And if you are interested, we will have it in the notes that you can take a look at, the article. I'm no specialist on here. All I know is when there is a level above 4 units, the EPA recommends remediation, which would be a negative pressure system. So what they want to do is make sure there's airflow sucking out that radon gas from below your home so that it doesn't go and seep into your basement. So if you're like me and you have finished space in your basement and you want to make sure it's taken care of so that there's no radon gas, then I would highly suggest having some sort of radon inspection and potentially mitigation system put in there if the levels are above what you are comfortable with. Now, your lender may ask you to pay for a couple things up front. There may be an appraisal fee, there may be a credit report fee. That's something you could talk to them about. I just want to bring that up, that may be there. So depending on what type of home you are buying, you could be in as low as $1,500 or as high as $3,000 to maybe even $5,000 before you even get to the closing table. And that is something we just want you to know. Another thing you may see on your closing disclosure is the mortgage tax and the realty transfer tax. Now, it varies based on the area and the county, but from our research, it shows that per every $100 of debt or mortgage that you pull, you are going to pay about 11.5 cents. And also for the realty transfer tax, for every $100 of the sales price. Now the mortgage transfer tax is based on the mortgage, the realty transfer tax is based on the sales price from our research, and you're gonna pay 37 cents. So in your closing disclosure, you may see that. That's something you need to know. That is going to happen anytime you buy a home or transact, and that is something the buyer is going to see on their side as a debit. And also for property taxes, you're going to see some proration. So if you close on a home in the month of May, the seller has lived in that home from January until the end of April, maybe even partway through May. So they're going to give you a credit for those taxes, and then you are going to pay for the rest of them. By the end of the year, you're going to get a bill and you'll see that you paid for the whole year. But what you need to remember is at closing, the seller gave you a credit. So they're going to see that as a closing expense on their side because that is how long they lived in the home. So therefore, that's a prorated amount of taxes they pay. Very quickly want to touch on HOAs. Around here, there aren't very many HOAs. If you live in a condo or townhome association, more than likely you'll run into an HOA. If you live in a PUD around here, we call that a planned unit development, which is essentially basically just a condo on land. You have a shared ownership interest in the property, but you don't own the land around your home outright. There are going to be HOAs, and some fees associated with that may be at a bare minimum a one-time initiation fee. Also, your monthly costs, which are set up to put money into reserves to cover the cost of insurance for the exterior. Maybe there's some common areas they maintain, a sign, maybe they put some plants out. In some neighborhoods, they have electric signs that light up. They have light posts that they have to pay for if it is not covered by the city. And so those are just some costs to think about. Also too, this is very important, if you are buying a condo or townhome or anything with an HOA, and there is some sort of assessment that is pending, it is the buyer's job to research that information. Now, a good realtor will call the HOA or email them and get some sort of documentation to show there has been no pending assessments, there is none on the docket, and we ask the question directly, are there any planned? Now that's a step further we personally go is to make sure we contact the HOA president to see, hey, what is the current situation, and to also make sure that we also try to look at as many minutes as they want to produce so we see the notes, because sometimes in older HOA communities, these properties are 50, 60 years old, and sometimes the roofs are older or the decks are older. Well, if the maintenance of that falls on the HOA and those are all falling apart, well, each person, if there's 100 condos, each person is going to have to pay 1/100th of the cost to replace everything. So that is very important to figure out on the front end. Now you may get a good deal on something and you go, okay, well, it makes sense for me to pay it. But the worst thing to do is find out you have to pay it after you close, because you may not have bought the property if you didn't know it in the first place. We have talked about your expenses relative to the cost of living in the area for housing. So let's now talk about entertainment. Some families, and if you guys have done any research about me, I have a big family. My wife and I have 4 kids. So if we go out, there is a cost associated with that. It is not as easy as just going out there and running in the park. I wish it were that easy all the time, but it's not. So there are various different things you want to do around here. One of those I want to bring up is a place called Tiebreakers, which is in Johnson City. This is a lot like Dave & Buster's, but if you want to go there, the bowling games are sometimes anywhere from $20 to $40 an hour. You have to think about what's going to cost you to put credits on your card to play the games. They also have laser tag, which ranges from anywhere from $20 to $30 an hour. And also the food, it is a restaurant style, so you're going to pay a little bit more than normal for the food because they do kind of have you captive. So that could be something if it's just you and your spouse, a very quick, easy $60 night, or if you have multiple kids, that could turn into $300 really quickly. And if that's in the budget, that's perfect. But if it's not, and you show up there and you don't watch this video and you don't know that, that's what we have to talk about. Another part of this area is maybe some sort of concert you want to go to. Now, we have places where concert tickets could range as little as $40, and there are some other times where tickets have been close to $100 a person. It all depends on the act, but I think we've talked about it before. If you want to go see a bigger venue, you may be traveling somewhere like Charlotte or Asheville, Atlanta, or Knoxville, which are all very short drives away from here. Let's also talk about different family events around here. So one of my favorite things to do is go to the Appalachian League baseball games, specifically the Johnson City Doughboys. and go and enjoy it. So tickets are sometimes very minimal, anywhere from $10 to $20. Food is very, very, very reasonable. You could get something for yourself anywhere from $10 to $15. And then of course your drinks anywhere from $3 to $5. So all in between your ticket, your food, your drink, and maybe even a little souvenir, you're looking around $50 per person. If you do some sort of group package, it may be a lot smaller, but for anywhere around less than $100, you and your family could have a great time making some memories at a local baseball stadium. So one thing we have that not a lot of other places have are access to lakes. And one point I wanted to bring up was the cost associated with boating on the lake. If that is something you enjoy, if you have a boat, or if you want to move here and you want to buy a boat or become part of a boat club, or maybe just even rent a boat for the day. All right, so if you're looking to rent your boat for the day, you're looking at anywhere between the amount of people you have and the size of the boat, anywhere from $200 to $900 a day. Now that it also includes gas and any sort of food you want to bring on there. We put that number all in together. Huge range, but something to think about. Now, if you wanted to join a boat club, there is a one-time initiation fee and sometimes a fee of anywhere from $200 to $300 a month. There's some pros and cons to that. Obviously, you don't have the cost of keeping up with the boat, of putting any sort of maintenance on there, of improving it. You could pick out the boat you want to use and you could take it out and then you bring it back and everyone handles the storage and the maintenance. The cons are you got to share it with other people and there's also time constraints. And so that's something that you have to weigh yourself. But for a marginal one-time fee, I've heard it anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 depending on which type of program you use and how long you sign up. And also to your monthly payment, you may see that as a really good opportunity because of time. Or if you want to go the route that some other people go, you buy a boat, which I've seen personally a pontoon boat that was around $15,000 that I would have loved. I think my kids are too young right now to have one, but in the future. Owning the boat has a lot of different costs. So you're looking at fuel anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s a year, depending on how many times you take it out. And of course, the size of your boat. If you have a little bass boat that you're taking out on the water, it won't be as much. But if you have a big pontoon boat that you have a lot of people on, of course, it's going to use more fuel. Maintenance of the boat, I have research to show about 10% of the boat's price per year that you'll pay. So again, bringing up that pontoon boat, you'll pay anywhere from $1,500 to $1,600 a year. Slip, if you want to park your boat in a in-water marina slip, you're looking at a cost of anywhere from $3,000 to $12,000 a year. And of course, that depends on location, the amenities of the dock itself, and various different things. So doing your own research, you could probably find out your specific number for this area, but we just want to bring this out to you. And finally, storage. If you want to store it in your own property and there's no restrictions that you can do it, obviously that doesn't cost as much. You just have to winterize it. But if you want to park it somewhere in a storage facility, if you want to park it somewhere where it's dedicated boat storage, that could cost anywhere from $400 to $1,500 per year. The last part about entertainment I want to bring up are our natural resources, our parks. We have a beautiful amount of parks and trails in this area that have relatively little cost to go to. So there are numerous parks around here that cost no money to get into, or if they do, it's a nominal fee of $3 to $5 just for a day pass for the park. Buffalo Mountain in Johnson City, part of the Appalachian Trail, just over near Roan Mountain. Carver's Gap, which I have numerous times talked about. It's my favorite place to go. It has some of the most beautiful views of Tennessee, Virginia, and North Carolina, all in a panoramic setting. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love going up there. And then if you want to camp in some places, there are spots that they have, but it could be as much as $40 a night. So for a very nominal fee, you can enjoy the outdoors and the parks that Northeast Tennessee has to offer. All right, so one part of the cost of living in this area is travel. If you travel for your job and you are taking a lot of flights, we have a regional airport. There's some pros and cons to it that I want to go over. So let's talk about it being regional. With being a regional airport, the Tri-Cities Airport shares flights with different areas. So that could be Atlanta, that could be Charlotte, it could be Dallas-Fort Worth. So if you were looking to fly direct to somewhere, we don't have as many direct flights as maybe an airport in Knoxville or Nashville or Asheville or Charlotte where some other people fly out of. But if you are looking for somewhere to walk into, have a very easy park to gate experience, it's my absolute favorite part about the airport here, then the Tri-Cities Airport is something that you would really enjoy. The downside to this, though, is that we're relying on other places to bring their crew and their airplane here for us to take our connecting flight somewhere else. And when there's a little bit of weather, I personally have waited a couple different hours for flights because they had to cancel them because the weather was bad. There's not a lot of other flights coming out of here. We only have 6 gates at this airport. So sometimes if you miss the flight because of the weather, you may not be flying out that day. It doesn't happen very often, but it is something to bring up. There are pros and cons of this. I will say the overall best con is that you can go and park, go to your gate, check in, check your bag, and go through security all within 20 minutes at the most. And that's like if it took you a long while to go park and if it took you a long while at check-in because there maybe were 1 or 2 people. The downside of that, though, is staffing. I've seen the person that does the check-in for you when you go to drop your bag is also the same person that goes to the gate. So I personally have ran into, if you don't get there on time, there's no one at that desk to check you in and check your bag. So if you're checking a bag, you are up a creek without a paddle, and something to think about. With all that being said, there is a cost. There is a cost for a regional airport because you're paying for 2 flights. Obviously, the less flights you take, it's going to cost less money. So some direct flights we have are Atlanta, Charlotte, Dallas, Fort Worth, and also Chicago, Orlando, St. Petersburg or Clearwater, Florida, and Washington, D.C. So if those are some areas that you fly to regularly, we do have direct flights to there. But the number one highlight I want to say is the time it takes you to get from parking your car to your gate to wait and just be ready to fly. Sometimes that cost associated if you're going on a vacation, you don't want to have to deal with a long drive, a lot of people, then that is going to be a great fit for you as an airport. Let's talk about car rentals in the area. There aren't a lot of car rental places, and I have personally talked to clients that when they come in for a weekend, there are no rental cars whatsoever. So if you are thinking of planning a visit here, that is something you want to get booked very far in advance because there isn't a large amount of rental car places around here. They do their best to try and make sure that their cars are available, but if there's a huge influx due to various different types of entertainment going on, those cars get snagged up quickly. If you go to a large city like Nashville, rideshare programs are very prevalent. Around here, there are some, but they don't run 24/7. So you may need a rideshare for a flight early in the morning. You may have to call a taxi, or you may have to think of an alternative way and call a buddy because it is not like different places in America where that can just happen just like that. So that's a note that I want to make sure that you know. So cost of living in Northeast Tennessee relative to children, I could go all day about these things, but what is the cost of childcare around here? From our research, we show anywhere from a infant, so that's anybody 2 years and younger for the sake of this research, anywhere from $1,000 to $1,400 a month for weekly childcare. So that may vary based on how many hours during the day or how many days you use, but that's just a base number if you're doing research about cost of living in this area that you need to know. And then toddlers are anywhere from $700 to $1,000 per month. We personally have a child in pre-K and we pay about $190 a week for that pre-K program, and it is something we highly recommend, so well worth the money we personally spend. So if both parents work and there is no family around there to help, summer camps may be something that we have to look at. So our research shows anywhere from $65 to $125 a week. Some summer camps are the Doe River Gorge. They have a great summer camp there. The YMCA in Kingsport and also in Bristol has some, and then there's also various other churches around the area that have some at a low to no cost. My children aren't heavily into travel sports yet or any sort of large-scale extracurricular activity, but in my research you could see for some sort of travel basketball, a minimum of $400 to sign up, like an AAU program, and then also travel associated with the tournaments and if you're traveling the whole year. So one parent I talked to, it's up to $1,000. Also travel baseball could be up to $2,000 a year for tournaments and jerseys and fees associated with that on top of the travel expenses you'll see. Now, one thing, if you have a child that's really into sports and that is their thing and you like that for them, we don't have a ton of tournaments around here. So you may travel to places like Atlanta or Knoxville or Charlotte to play these tournaments. So you're going to have to factor in food, you're going to have to factor in lodging, and you're going to have to factor in what you're going to do with your other kids if you have those during that time. So those are just some numbers to throw out there for you from real research I've done from both travel families I've talked to that do basketball and also travel coaches that I know personally through another business venture of mine. And also training. Around here, if you have a child that's into baseball or softball, some coaches charge about $60 per hour for a hitting lesson or $30 per half hour. So that's just something to factor in if you have a weekly goal to help your child improve and get better and learn a good work ethic, and also specialized fundamental training. There are some speed and agility classes around here. There is conditioning classes, strength. Physical therapists talk about the proper way to warm up and stretch. All that is going to be per hour, anywhere from $20 to $60, depending on the education level of the person and the experience that they are providing you. So let's talk about hidden costs and specifically the grid that we have here. We are a small metro area. So we are not a large scale Nashville or Knoxville or Chattanooga. We are a small metro. So that is less than 500,000 people in the metro area. And we're right on the cusp of it, but right now, the last number I looked at, that we are below the 500,000 mark for population in this area. So one basic element you're going to run into is you're just going to travel farther for things to do. We've covered this in multiple different videos, but if we're talking about the cost of living around here, if you want to go to a large concert, if you want to go to specialized dining or upscale lodging, you're going to travel for that. Our area, unfortunately, at this time doesn't have a lot of those options. There are some, but they aren't as prevalent as the major cities around us. Another hidden cost is just, quite frankly, the job market. I covered this in another video, but around here, the healthcare jobs seem to pay more than average, but a lot of the other jobs do pay below the national average. So a lot of ways people supplement for that is they take jobs that work from home. And I've sold houses to numerous people who have a job in an area where the cost of living is high, or then they move to a low cost of living state, and then they move to a low cost of living area in that low cost of living state, which would be Northeast Tennessee. Another hidden cost around here, and we talked about it a little bit in the first video, but is the healthcare situation. There are not a lot of providers around here, and if you need a specialist, there is going to be a cost associated with traveling to a larger city like Knoxville or Nashville, or maybe even you have to go to Atlanta or Charlotte for some sort of specialist. And one hidden cost I feel like not a lot of people talk about and I want to bring up as we close out this video is the grid. We don't have a lot of opportunity for large scale Amazon same-day deliveries. We do, I believe, have a great job at 2-day delivery, but if there's something you need immediately, probably not going to get it same day. If there's stores out of it, you are at the mercy of their supply chain. And that's just something you have to think about. So if you have an event that you want to go to that you need some sort of clothing item for, you need some sort of supply for, you really need to think about the cost of not planning ahead appropriately. That could be something as expedited shipping, which could cost anywhere from $50 to $100, or just the cost of missing the event altogether or missing the deadline. Another cost we have around here is being a mountainous area. There are some spots, and I'll show a graph right here that you'll see, of cell phone service. So as you see, as you get closer to the mountains, there is a lower, if not zero, cell phone coverage. There are also very, very little parts in the area where there is no cell phone service whatsoever. And I'm sure there's always areas in America where there are dead zones, but around here it seems to have a good amount of places off main roads. I can think of two off the top of my head, one traveling to Hampton, and another as you go from Johnson City to Piney Flats in an area called Watauga, that there is a dead zone that I drop calls almost all the time. So planning ahead, you just need to know, don't take calls around that time. But that's also a cost, because what if you're doing something and you need that cell phone service? That's just a grid concern that I have that I think you need to know. And as far as the infrastructure goes, if there's a major storm, like high wind, or recently, I think it was 8 years ago that we had the largest snowstorm. We just had one recently where we got about 6 to 8 inches of snow. There's not a lot of infrastructure to take care of those down power lines or removing snow off the streets. I believe the main roads get great attention, but there's a lot of side roads that don't get the attention they need. So that is a cost associated with living in a smaller metro area. And that's just something we have to figure out. Is that a pro or a con for you? All right, we made it to the end of the cost of living. So now after watching these 2 videos, you should be able to calculate every single thing that would go into making an adjustment and making a move to this area. Y'all, thanks for sticking around. Again, I'm DJ Slivka with the Slivka Property Group powered by Keller Williams here in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I would love to help you relocate to this area.